Good afternoon and welcome back to My Harlem Portraits. I'm Maria Grazia Cavenaghi and I'm your host. We are going to talk about Black excellence in every field. This is the subject of this program that wants to show how much African Americans have done to build this country and how important and fundamental their contribution has been. And when we talk about excellence in politics, we have one name in Harlem that represents that excellence, and this is the Honorable Inez Dickens, who has given us the honor of being with us.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Maria. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so happy you could do it. I've seen this lady running the street, talking to her constituents for years and years and years, so I know what she has been doing. And I'll tell you a little bit of what she's done. The Honorable Inez Dickens is the Assembly Democrat member for the 70th District of the New York State Assembly in Albany. This district includes portions of El Barrio, Hamilton Heights, Harlem, Morningside Heights, the Upper West Side, and Washington Heights in Manhattan. She is currently the chair of the subcommittee on micro-businesses. She was first elected to office in 1990 as a state committee woman and district leader. In 2006, she became the council member for the 9th New York City Council District, where she remained until 2016. She served at communities of Central Harlem, Morningside Heights, East Harlem, and parts of the Upper West Side. Then she was appointed as leader of Majority Whip and chair of the Committee on Standards and Ethics. Then she broke another glass ceiling when she became the first African-American woman in the history of the New York City Council to be appointed to the higher leadership position of Deputy Majority Leader and Chair of the Subcommittee on Planning, Dispositions, and Concessions. Last, during her tenure in office, Inez was tirelessly fighting to make New York City a more welcome place for all, assisting her constituents and listening to their demands. She brought millions of dollars in services and resources to her community and to economically distressed communities throughout the city of New York. And this is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. As I said, I've known you for so many years, and I've always admired. I don't know where you find all the energy to do all the things you do.
Oh, Maria, you're at every place I'm at almost when it's uptown, so you've got a lot of energy yourself.
Yeah, but I don't have the weight that you have on with all this what you have to take care of. I'm just there having fun. You are there working and having a burden to carry. That's difficult. You have been, for all your life, 30 years, committed to improving the quality of life of everyone in your community. And you started as a student activist. And I know that you had two great mentor figures, your father and your uncle.
Yes.
Tell me about your father and your uncle.
Well, my father, Lloyd E. Dickens, was the assembly member for the same district that I represent now. He was in the New York State Assembly, and he was a district leader. He became empowered because the leaders worked together for the betterment of Harlem, and they fought amongst themselves, but they, did what they had to do. My uncle, which was his younger brother, was in the Supreme Court. He was a Supreme Court judge, and he and my father were part of a family of 9, and they worked together as a family to build political empowerment for not only themselves but for the community in which they lived. So they worked very hard at it. It was difficult times then, as it is now, actually, with the same racism that they had 60, 70 years ago, the same hardships. It's just that blacks and Latinos are getting more education than they did years ago. But it's a lot of things that are occurring today occurred 60, 70, 80, or 100 years ago.
That is so terrible.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
We haven't gone far enough in progress to say that that will never happen again. It's not happening, unfortunately.
Exactly. Because that's why my family came here, was to go back to Africa, because they did not think that they would be able to improve their lives economically and politically in America. And when that was not able to occur, that's when they decided that they would do it in Harlem. And they did. They worked together to build the political empowerment, and were really the basis for what we now call the Gang of Four. Now we've got the Gang of Five.
Tell me about the Gang of Four and the Gang of Five.
Well, the Gang of Four came after my father, and it was Percy Sutton, Basil Patterson, David Dickens, and Charles Rangel. Oh, yes. All of which succeeded very well in various political levels of government, from the city up to the Fed, and did extremely well for Harlem. They might have fought amongst themselves, but when it came out, they came out as a united front, and nothing was done that they didn't talk with each other, talk with other community investors and stakeholders, and went out and made demands for support in order for Harlem to be able to get jobs, to get funding for programs. And they were good at it. They were good at it. And then now that because it's only Congressman Rangel and, of course, Mayor David Dickens, who are left. And now we have the Gang of Four that I started about a year and a half ago, which consists of myself, Assembly Member Robert Rodriguez, Al Taylor, two senators Brian Benjamin and Robert Jackson.
Fantastic.
That's the new Gang of Four.
The new Gang of
Yes, the new Gang of Five.
And so this is also probably one of the reasons why Harlem is such a hub for culture, for politics, for civil rights movements, because all these good politicians were able to get together and get things done.
Yeah, well, it was very important. I mean, years ago, Harlem has been the Mecca and the center of the African diaspora since really it came about. Because originally originally Harlem was HAARLEM. And it's white people, but as black people were forced from downtown, because we were down on 34th Street and downtown on the west side. And as they moved us north, then they began to move out, and we took over Harlem. I would say, because when I was born, when I was very, very young, there was still some whites still left in the northern part of Harlem. But by the time I guess I was about 6, it was predominantly all black and Latino.
So all this time, being an Harlemite and having fought for basic civil rights and human rights and social justice and so on, you have had always a focus. And the main focus of your political ideas is economic empowerment of minorities, small businesses, and with a special focus on women.
Exactly. I'm a woman, and my sister Dolores and I are the owners of a business, a small business, that we inherited from our family, from our father. And so it's important to me because I know the difficulties and the nuances that is involved with ownership of small businesses and the navigating of the new rules that are coming out and the problems that become inherent and that's regardless of what the business is, the small business. And for women, it's been particularly difficult because women are still looked at quiet as it's kept, even though we're now the chairs and the presidents of banks, and we own newspapers. The bottom line is that when we can start to saying, well, this woman is this and this one, that means there's not enough of us that have risen to that level.
Not only,
so
we are not paid the same.
Exactly.
For
and
the
they
same
don't pay
work.
the same. Exactly.
Absolutely. So, what is your position about this plan, which has been launched by Governor Cuomo, about to try to increase the number of certified NWE?
I am very happy because he has raised that. Governor David Paterson was the first that raised it. When it was 2%, he was the first one to raise it up. And then subsequent to that, of course, it has risen. And under Governor Cuomo, he rose it to 30%, which is good. The thing that I have argued about on the city level first and now on the state level is that the legislation needs teeth. In that there's no real punishment if you fail to adhere to that 30%. So it's great to have 30% in there as a requirement, but if there's no teeth that says if you fail to do that, and you must report it back to the agency that gave you the contract in the first place, and then look for a minority to see if that's true, because it's easy to give me a contract and I could say, oh yeah, look, I have an electrical contract and I looked for black electricians that are certified and licensed and I can't find any. And I've had people to actually say that. So it's no teeth in the legislation for punishment. And I have asked that be amended so that real punishment is put in if you fail to adhere to it, and if you come back and say that you tried and we still can't, that's one thing. But if you don't look and you don't report it, and we don't try to help you to find a minority or woman-owned business that can do the work, then there should be some ramifications behind that on your contract.
Absolutely. So, like, for example, you have to give some money back, or you're not
you
going to
might lose the contract, or you might have to forfeit certain parts of the contract. I mean, there's all kind of ways it can be done, but it just needs to have, the legislation needs to have some teeth in it.
What you're saying is absolutely true, because in Europe it took a long time, especially in Italy, because northern countries have always been much more advanced as far as women's rights and women equality with men is concerned. But in Italy, when I went back to Italy after college and after getting into the European Parliament, I realized that we were so backward. There was very, very, very few women in politics, maybe 4 or 5%. Now the European Parliament has made a law, some time ago, has made a law that you need to have 30% of women in high positions and so on, in CEOs of companies and so on, because unfortunately, if you don't make it necessary, obligatory, they're not going to do it.
No. It's not going to happen.
They're not going to do it. And those people who say, yes, but we want quality, excuse me.
That's exactly.
Excuse me. You don't say we want quality when you have to take a man, you know?
That's right. You hit the nail on the head.
Exactly. So in September, another thing that happened recently is that the MTA released its 5-year wish list, this $54 billion capital plan.
That's right.
I know that you are in contact, I believe, with Michael Garner, who is another fantastic, illustrious Harlemite, and who is the vice president and the Chief Diversity Officer for the MTA.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about what you discussed about and how this plan
Well,
came about.
it was really 2 weeks ago that the MTA released its capital plan. They will be releasing approximately $60 million in contracts a month for 60 months. And Mike and I have been working on a MWBE plan in order to see how we can shape it so that it can be part of the capital plan and what we can put into it that has enforcement as a part of it. Because it's very important to me with a contract such as this that's getting ready to roll out, that MWBEs are incorporated in, made a part of, and actually get the contracts and get paid. Now, the problem with having state and city contracts is that they don't pay timely. See, now that's one of the problems that
60
they've
days,
had,
90 days.
or more.
Wow.
And they pay in increments, which is fine, and they have to inspect, but there's no timely inspections. So you report in that you've finished Part A, and then they don't have enough inspectors on staff that can come in to make the inspections to see, did you do it? And so I have been looking into something that the feds had tried, I guess about 7 years ago. I really don't know if it worked. I have to talk to Congressman Greg Meeks, who was really a part of that. They had something similar to a credit card that they gave the minority contractors with a limit on it, where they could use it only for supplies. In other words, they couldn't use it at a clothing store, and they could only use it at the vendors that they had already put down that they would utilize in order to pay for supplies, so that at least their supplies were paid for. Because what happens with MWBEs, they don't get the money, they can't pay for the supplies, so then the next round, they can't get them on credit. So it becomes a problem. So it at least had freed up what money they might have had in their own books in order to continue paying withholding tax and continuing to pay their salaries because their vendors were paid out of the contract. It was that amount was taken out of the contract, but at least it was to the vendors in which they were buying their supplies for that development.
That is a fantastic idea.
Yes, it really, really is. So I've been trying to see if that's something that can be done on the city and state level as well.
And that was done at the...
I saw it in Washington about 7 years ago. Greg Meeks, Congressman Greg Meeks out of Queens, was was heading that up on small businesses. And they were using it as a trial to see if, in fact, it would work. And so I want to see how it worked and if they're continuing with that. Because if so, I would like the state and city to look at that program to see if that's something that can be incorporated here, because I don't see why it cannot. Because instead, the city does have something where you can, if you have a contract, you can go borrow some money and at low interest, but you're borrowing money against your own contract, and then you have to pay interest on it, even though it's low interest.
It doesn't make any sense. Even if it's low, why should I pay?
Yes.
You owe me the money. You pay the interest.
So that's why I said a credit card that's only got a limit on it, only can be used at the contractors that you have designated.
Like, for example, if you have a paper and you have to pay the printer and they're not paying you, the paper is not going to come out if you don't have the money to pay the printer.
And you're not going to be able to go back to that printer and get anything extra in the future on credit. So that's why that was something that I thought was a good idea when I first read it, when I first saw it, and I just need to know if it worked, and if the federal government is still utilizing it, because they were just using it to see. As a template to see if it would work. Of course, it's not nearly enough money, but this is a very old system. This is a system this is 2019. We're getting ready to hit into 2020. This is a subway system that was built at the turn of the last century, the 20th century, and it was built massively. There was no other subway in the entire world that went to as many places and had the outreach to 5 boroughs as this one did. And so it's been, it's an old system. See, in other places, they're much newer. They was in Washington, they didn't even start a subway until around 1990 or 1985, and it went 2 blocks.
Yeah.
You know, you could walk the 2 blocks, and now it's going a few more blocks. But I mean, it's a new system. This one is an extremely old system. So the infrastructure is going to be old. It's impossible, just almost impossible with the massive transit system that we have, that you can get to everything to do preventive maintenance. And that's what has happened. Preventive maintenance wasn't done everywhere, and so now the system, the infrastructure is damaged and needs a lot of work and needs this kind, and that is not enough, to be perfectly honest, because this is a system that goes. There's almost no place in New York City that you don't have to, you can't reach a subway. Either you might have to walk a little bit, you might have to take a bus to, but the subway goes in all 5 boroughs.
And it runs all day.
And it runs 24 hours, exactly.
I've never seen
exactly.
a
I'm advocating for elevators and escalators to be put in for physically challenged, more elevators than escalators. And some assembly member, when he was in the assembly, Keith Wright, did 135th Street. I'm now trying to work on 116th Street with the MTA, and they do have a very aggressive plan that they intend to put elevators in quite a few of the subway stations. But I want to make sure that Harlem gets 1 or 2 of those subway stations that have elevators.
Thank you. We need that. Well,
exactly.
People in Harlem need that. Now, we're talking about something also that has a lot of problems. It comes with a lot of problems, the 2020 census.
Yes.
In the U.S., you do a census every 10 years, right? And that is the way to see how many people live in different districts, and based on that, the district receives money, funds.
Exactly.
Right? So it is very important. A number of seats in the House of Representative in each state. Tell me what is the problem about this 2020 census that
well,
has
it's not
been
just
talked
about the
about
2020 census. The problem with the census is that in minority communities, it's always been a severe underestimating of the number of people residing. Because it's about how many people reside, not how many people vote, but how many people actually reside in the district. And immigrants historically have been nervous about doing it for fear that they would be removed from this country. But never before to the extent as it is today. No. See, today it's a lot different. 20 years ago, they were frightened. Now they're scared to death because they're afraid that those numbers, which are they've promised very, significantly that this will not go to ICE, that the ICE will not be called then, that it's impossible. But everybody's afraid. Yeah, everybody's afraid of something like that, and so they have not shown a plan of how they really intend to count the immigrant nations, because the immigrants, as well as the residents that are citizens, we all are receiving services. We all need the subways. We all need the hospitals. All the services, the libraries, the schools, all of that we're all utilizing, which means we must be counted. And with the promise and commitment that these numbers and these names will not be used to remove you from your home and send you back to where they
never came from.
Yes, where you never came from. That's a good one. And so it's a frightening experience. But I'm so fighting so hard because I want to see a plan. I want to see a plan implemented. How are you going to do that? And the only way I see that you can do that is to hire people from a community that speak the language, look like the community, and the community might be more responsive to someone that they recognize, someone that speaks their language, someone that they know, that will be able to, that they can talk to, and they can be convinced that this is not going to be reported to the federal government or to immigration or to ICE in order for them to be reported. Because it's so important that the minority communities has lost billions of dollars over the years because of the undercounting. And redistricting, the redrawing of the lines of the assembly districts, of the city council, of the congressional districts. It's all contingent upon how many people are in a district. So it's very, very important that we be a part of this, and often it's not done. So you can now they're going to set up some of the libraries in the minority communities. They're going to be trying to hire people that will go out into the community because that is what's needed. I can't talk about it enough how important it is.
We are getting to the end of our program, because when you have interesting conversation, time goes fast.
Well, that means you're going to need to invite me back.
Exactly.
I think it's very important because that's going to...
Tell me a little bit about that.
That's going to raise the economic base of 125th Street. It's going to, which is necessary. It has to be our sustainable area of commercial land where people can go to the stores, where they can live, where they can enjoy. And so it's very important that we have 125th Street sustained. And the Urban League is coming back to Harlem. They left, but now they found their way back. And I was able to work with the governor because it was on state land. And what's going to happen is they're going to build a civil rights museum. And they're going to put in the 100 black men are going to be able to occupy it, and Jazzmobile is going to be able to occupy it for free in perpetuity. They will as long as they want to stay there, they will never have to pay any rent. But that was a very difficult push for me.
That is fantastic.
But I was able to get it because our smaller institutions need that kind of help.
Absolutely.
Because the funding is and then there's going to be 170 units of affordable housing and affordability. What's the definition of affordability? And it goes really block by block. And so I was able to finally get the governor to sign on to, it would be 40% AMI, area median income, up to 80% max. It's a big push that Senator Brian Benjamin and I did. He had to push it in the Senate, and I pushed it in the Assembly. And in the Assembly, I got 100% vote yes.
Fantastic.
This
is how we're going to finish.
That's what I'm talking about.
This show is finishing in the best possible way.